Hi, everybody. I am very excited to welcome our guest today, Stephanie Sarazin, who is the author of this fabulous book, Soul Broken, and who has done all of this work on ambiguous grief. So, as we all know, everyone in our community has experienced a lot of things, but one of the primary things that we all experience is grief. And sometimes the grief dies hard. It takes a long time to get over that grief. Or there's always a little pocket of it somewhere, that gets activated when you see something, you pass a restaurant, you hear a song, and that grief comes back. But the grief is different than the grief you experience when somebody dies, because it's ambiguous grief. So today I'm really excited, that we have the chance to hear from Stephanie, to understand more about this topic, to sort of dive into it. And I suppose my first question for you would be, how did you get into this field? What drew you to this particular topic?
Desperation to feel better. Yes, but thank you, Vikki, for having me and for such a warm introduction. It's really nice to join you. And of course, so much about this topic and have provided so much support to this community, which includes myself. And it was to answer your question, it was really certainly nothing I wanted to explore. It's something I had to explore when, much like you and the community, I found myself perplexed, distraught, and learned that the marriage I had been in, the relationship I'd had for 20 years wasn't what I had believed it to be.
Yes.
And the subsequent, that discovery and then the subsequent divorce left me. And in your book, you so beautifully describe it, the tornado stage.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. I was in a stage of just real, frantic, dishevelment, trying to understand.
That's a very good word. Descriptive word.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
It just, tornado is exactly how it felt.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get out, as one can't get out of a tornado, right? It's hard.
Yes.
So I was just desperate to feel better, discovering that my reality wasn't the reality of my marriage. As you know, does quite a number on a person emotionally and cognitively.
Sure.
And so I was thinking, okay, if I could just figure out why I feel like I do, if I could understand this, then I can feel better. Then I can get out of bed.
Right.
Because again, much like many of the women you describe in Runaway Husbands, I loved my marriage. I, had it happened 5 minutes sooner, I would have described it, in all the different ways. But, just really out of a desperate need to feel better, I started to learn whatever I could about grief. And the closest thing I could find at the time, and again, this was 2016, the closest thing I could find at the time was Dr. Pauline Boss, who had written about ambiguous loss. And she had started this by saying, it's loss that's experienced, or it's the onset of the, when you don't know if somebody has died, for example, a kidnapping or a tsunami, event where you're not sure, or a POW is, or, somebody's missing in action, and the families they don't know how to grieve or if they should grieve because there's no confirmed death. And later her work went on to expand and include cognitive absence, such as Alzheimer's or dementia. So it was a close but not quite cousin to how I was feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I very well knew where he was. He was now 4 miles away and dating. And I was unable to get out of bed and care for our 3 children, right?
Mhm.
So that grief was something I couldn't read about.
Yes.
And so I started looking and eventually I developed a hypothesis after meeting several women
Mhm.
in therapeutic groups. Um, and I found that there were common threads, as you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Um, and I ended up creating a survey, deploying the survey, reading the data, much like you, and then
Sounds familiar.
finding all
Yeah.
these commonalities. And
Yes.
even like you, I also stopped collecting at 400 and had, right? We have so many parallels.
I know, it's ridiculous.
And
Yeah.
and that is how I came into really understanding ambiguous grief, what makes it different, the nuances and kind of different variables that we experience, and then hopefully um, how to integrate, how to heal.
So just jumping off of that, what makes ambiguous grief different than an actual loss based on
Right.
death, let's say?
Yeah, and we all know we're going to die. That's no surprise to
Yeah.
anybody. And yet we don't do death and grief well in our society,
Yeah.
right? It's still kind of it can be an awkward dance sort of thing,
Mhm.
as we're supporting others. And for ambiguous grievers, when the person you're grieving is still alive, but
Mhm.
the relationship has been changed or severed, there are no societal norms to engage.
Right.
And societal norms, those rituals, the things that even though we don't do it well, we all know what to do,
Yes.
or what our community does, what our family does when we have a death. Maybe we take a casserole,
Mhm.
perhaps we sit Shiva, we
Yeah.
go to the funeral, we read a eulogy, there's an
Yes.
obituary. And for me, because I so loved my marriage, there was no opportunity for
Right.
me to have that witnessed. And
Yes.
all grief heals when it's witnessed. And
Yes.
I don't mean, as you said, it's not healed and forever gone, never to
Mhm.
be thought of again, but it is integrated. We can start to integrate our grief when others witness it. But
Mhm.
without those societal norms to engage, that opportunity doesn't present. And if shame or embarrassment
Mhm.
is part of
Mhm.
the experience, then what I found is that ambiguous grievers often isolate and grieve
Yes.
alone.
Yes. Wow. As you're talking, you're making me think we should create a ritual. We should create, for all of the women who are going through this, and everybody
Mhm.
wants closure, and there is no closure. That we should create, a ritual in the same way people. I
Mhm.
often give out an article that says the title of which is "Where Are My Cakes and Casseroles?"
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
it compares when people die and everyone brings the cakes and casseroles, and then when your husband leaves and everybody's gossiping behind
Yes.
the tree talking about what's going on.
Exactly. Well, and I did just that. I call it a faux funeral. So,
Okay, tell us about that.
and I'm laughing as I say it. I recognize that it might sound kind of silly,
It
a
doesn't sound
faux
silly. It
funeral.
sounds necessary.
It was necessary, Vikki. And for me, I found it to be, I just felt it. I personally felt that, not knowing that witness is so crucial to grief, which I learned later in my research, but a year after my discovery, and at this point the divorce had been finalized, I just felt the wound needed sutured in some
Yes.
way. And I
Oh, wow.
asked
Yeah.
my 2 dearest friends, the 2 who had seen my marriage up close, they were
Yes.
neighbors, and I asked if they would come. um, I we sat by a small lake pond in my
Mhm.
community. I had a few songs on
Mhm.
my phone ready to cue, and I had written some words. I asked if they would like to share anything, and they did. Their remembrances of my marriage. And then at the end, what was such a surprise was when I thanked them for coming.
Mhm.
We kind of finished, and in that moment, I felt and I mean this with no disrespect to widows who
Mhm.
grieve a husband to a physical death or a spouse to a physical death.
Mhm.
I felt, oh, this must be what it feels like to
Yes.
have somebody say, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Oh my gosh,
And
it's so profound. It's so profound. And, I so agree with you. And, I'm reading your book and I'm like, oh, yeah, I came across that idea too. I came across that idea too. Oh my God, another idea. I mean, it's
right,
like we're on the same wavelength. And that whole
yes,
issue of a witness is so profound because you know what happens if you're driving your car and somebody rear ends you. The first thing you do is look out the window to see, did anybody see what happened?
oh,
We want a
right,
witness. We want someone who could say, I could see what happened. You were stopped at the light and the guy just drove right into you. And we need somebody, an external witness who can view what happened and confirm your reality, particularly in our situation, in the runaway husband situation, where the husband is dismantling your reality and you're very confused. Was I really such a horrible person? Was I really that controlling? Was it really all my fault? And we need that external witness. And so that idea of
yes,
a witness is so profound. And just the other thing I'm going to jump in to say
yeah,
is that I just did a retreat in the Caribbean. And as part of the retreat, we did a ritual where we chose three natural objects like a shell or a rock or something. And they wrote on it the things that they were hanging on to that they felt they couldn't let go
mhm,
of. And then we went to this beautiful island and they buried it. They buried their stuff. And then
mm,
they said a eulogy over the burial. And
yes,
that women
beautiful.
said that they really found that it was very releasing, that it was helpful. So
I
again, it's
yes,
that idea of having the ritual. I mean, totally, we're onto something. You and I are going to work together. We're going to prepare this for the women in
it
our
it
group.
it's
Yeah.
transformative. And as I've
Yes.
worked with women in similar situations, it's always something I suggest,
Yes.
and have guided through. But I just want to say, you said validation, and I just want
Yes.
to circle back to that because I think that's so, um, it's a mini but mighty and important word
Yes.
because that was something I didn't know I was looking for
Yes.
in those first few months of confusion of the
Yes.
tornado.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody validate and say, I I saw
Yes.
the marriage
Yes.
and I see the grief.
Yes.
Um, right? It's almost a permission
Yes.
that we're seeking because we don't, otherwise, we're not getting it from the
Yes.
person we would normally have turned to.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, so I just, again, thank you for saying that. Validation is so important.
Yeah. 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 Okay.
Mhm.
Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is that you talk about forgiveness.
Mm.
That's often a big topic in our community, and women are often asking me, do I need to forgive in order to heal? So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that topic?
Well, I call forgiveness the other F word.
I love that.
And
I love.
and for me, this was, and I can feel it in my body now. It's still a little bit of an open sore because I was so surprised early on. I didn't tell anybody for 3 months that I had discovered my husband had been living a double life for
Yes.
most of our marriage. Um, but when I finally did, I was surprised to hear from people I respect and care about that the first thing I had to do was forgive and that I would not be able to heal unless I could forgive. And so that
Right.
was, kind of job number one. And respectfully, I okay, that wasn't where my head was at the
Yes.
time, right? And you know, along the way, I was surprised at how much it kept coming up.
Yes.
And ultimately, I learned it wasn't important for me, but it was important for other people. And people have opinions
Yes.
on this. Ultimately, what I have come to believe is that you know forgiveness, yes, forgiveness is a good thing, and I
Yeah.
understand we don't want to be filled with the poison, and it
Yes.
only hurts us, yes, and all of the things. But forgiveness, like love,
Hmm.
can't be forced.
Yes.
Right. And again, as I
Mhm.
say, the faux I also
Yes.
say we hurt ourselves when we faux give. So
Yes.
if we give a fake forgiveness and say, oh, how should I forgive you? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I forgive him. And I'm
Yes.
the better person. I forgave him.
Yes.
What that does actually to our physiology
Yes.
is dangerous, because we
Yes.
are out of alignment. We are lying to
Yes.
ourselves.
Totally.
Our bodies know
Totally
it
get you.
raises
Yeah.
our heart rate. It
Yeah.
increases our blood pressure.
Yes.
It creates more anxiety. And
Yes.
so I like to say, if you can, take that pressure off of yourself and
Totally.
remove forgiveness from the equation right now. And instead of searching for forgiveness, which society tells us,
Mhm.
we need to do, especially women, instead of searching for forgiveness, just focus on yourself and create space so forgiveness can find you. And
Yes. Totally.
if
Yeah.
it does, when it does,
Mhm.
great. But to force it, you're not fooling anybody, and it's more detrimental than it is good.
I 100% agree. But I think even to take forgiveness out of the equation, because one of the things that I've recognized among the women in our community is that we all tend to be good girls. We want to do the right thing. We want to help. We want to self-sacrifice. We want to,
Yes.
run out of our way to do everything right. And, and there's a religious tradition that forgiveness is, that you have
Yes.
to forgive, in certain religions, that's, but so again, it's just what you're saying, that it puts the pressure on you. And as long as you have forgiveness as a goal and it doesn't come naturally, then you're searching for it. It's
Right.
sort of like when your computer is trying to resolve and the little wheel is going around and around.
It's good. Yes.
Looking for forgiveness. And you never get to that page. So that I think that if you take the forgiveness, out of the equation and don't even hope that it comes to you or not hope that it comes to you, that it's immaterial. What we don't want is bitterness. That we don't want to turn into, that this becomes that the loss, the way your husband left and the bad way he treated you and all of that is like the standard that you carry into the rest of your life. Look what he did to me, and that you have this justification and that you become bitter. No, I so love what you're saying about feeling that alignment, feeling clear in your body, not carrying it with you. I'm on board 100%. I'm very good with it.
I'm so glad to hear that. Yes.
Yeah.
And, when I was doing research for my book, thinking, why do so many women feel this obligation?
Yes.
I don't, granted it's limited, but in what I was able to find on men,
Yes.
men aren't talking about this, about forgiveness,
Okay.
about, for as much as women. And what I thought was interesting was, I found that, going back, as you said, into the religious traditions and the poets in the 18th century or 17th century, to err is human, but to forgive is divine,
Yes.
and then the etiquette books of the 19th century
Yeah.
blew my mind.
Yes.
Because it's really over and over about to be a woman of society, to be a proper woman.
Yes.
A lady, in a gentleman, has an error, no matter what it may be, you simply forgive and move on. Forgive and move on. And I think that's I think it's wrong.
Yes.
I don't agree.
Great. Okay. Now, one other thing you talked about, and first of all, I'm going to put a bracket, and we're going to have a shameless commerce moment, because I want to tell people how much work Stephanie did in this book. Just like what you're saying about the 18th century, 19th century etiquette, but you did so much research, and the book is not only your thoughts and ideas, but you're referencing so many people, so many other philosophers and psychologists and everything. And one of the things that I really love about the book is that at the end of each chapter is a page like this, which is called Wise Words. And this particular page is wise words on emotions, mindfulness, and meditation. And it has quotes from Yoda, the Jedi Master, Ice Cube, Thich Nhat Hanh, Steve Jobs, and Carl Jung. So if you want to get a vast idea about the wise words, go to these pages, at the end of each chapter, and it's so entertaining to read, the thoughts of these other thinkers,
Right.
that contribute so much to to your understanding in the book.
Thank you.
So it's really a delight, and I mean, so I'm aware of how much work you did, how much research you did in creating the book.
I did, and it was really, and thank you for that. And you'll notice, out of the sample you just read, those were all male voices. And this really got my goat as I was researching. I said to my editor at one point, I'm not adding another male. Where are the girls? I need female voices.
Bring me the girls.
And I said, this is ridiculous. And so, and again, it's just another example of telling the woman's story. And so often, if again, back to shame and embarrassment,
yes.
if we're feeling shamed that our husbands have,
yes.
Jekyll and Hyde, or they've, whatever it may be, we may not express it. We may not share it. We wrongly assume it's our fault.
Yes.
We take the heat.
Yeah.
And then our story isn't told. And so, I hope, your book, my book, books that tell the truth of our stories, help others feel permission to tell theirs. And then maybe we'll have more stories to read and more women to quote.
That's great. Okay. One other thing you talk about is making an intention. So tell us more about that idea of making an intention and how one can use it.
I think intention is a terrific tool that I'm sure you work with your clients, your patients as well. It was something my therapist had introduced to me in this way, saying, what is your intention now? What is your intention here? And, early on, my intention was to figure out what happened, was to understand. My intention was to get him help because again, clearly it's a brain tumor. Clearly there is, or maybe he's a CIA operative. And, all of the things we create because we don't understand what has happened. And so intention is such a great tool, in my opinion, as long as we're using it for us. Right. And this was something that, and this is something that as I was doing the research, what I found made ambiguous grief, the tiny little nuance that made it different inside of it was hope, was how we handle hope.
Yes.
And when our husbands say, I'm leaving, I can't do this, I've called a divorce attorney, or whatever they're going to say, what is our response? What do we do? And do we start hoping for their healing, for the marriage healing? Are we hoping? And I call it external hope and internal hope. And so our external hope is hope that directs attention to the loved one, with the goal of restoring the relationship. So the intention is to, our behaviors are focused on helping understand what happened, helping the husband heal or change their mind, or and it's negotiating this behavior or fixing or modifying ourselves, right, in order to restore it. So that's external hope. And then internal hope. So hope is a double agent, right? I talk about this like hope. I know hope is a good thing, but and we need hope, but hope is a double agent for ambiguous grievers. So it can either have us working on external hope, but also internal hope, because external hope is exhausting. And then they're not doing what we need them to do, or we feel like we're tap dancing. And then internal hope is that hope that is directed to ourself. It's directed to the present. And it is giving our attention to life as it is, not as we want it to be, or not returning it to what it once was, right? And so when we can continue practicing internal hope and have the intention of catching ourselves when we're in external hope and saying, okay, I see what I'm doing here. External hope feels really good because you're problem solving. Especially for good girls like us, right? We're going to fix this. Let's put the marriage on our back and fix it. So when we can have an intention to say, okay, I'm going to notice when I'm hoping in the wrong direction, and I'm going to bring
Yes.
hope back to myself and be present in the moment and focus on me and do something good for me.
Mhm.
And that may be a whole host of different things, but just keeping that intention grounded
Mhm.
to taking care of you
Yes.
is little by little by little how I find, the breadcrumb trail of healing.
Out of the woods. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Out of the woods.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I really love that
Mm-hmm.
distinction. And it helps me a lot because I've often been mad at hope. You hope for something, and then when it doesn't happen, it's so much worse than if you hadn't hoped for it at all. But now we can see, that you can hope for something external, but if you
Mm-hmm.
keep the focus more firmly on yourself and hoping that you recover, and then you have some power to do
That's right.
things that are going to influence that outcome.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
I have a visual for this if it might help. So,
yeah,
and speaking of, beautiful quotes, Emily Dickinson. Oh, I mean,
yes.
brilliant. And she said, hope is a thing with feathers that perches on the soul and sings a tune without the words and never stops at all. And oh, how light and lovely and beautiful. And it reminds me always of Cinderella's bluebirds, just perched on the soul and singing a tune. And oh, we need hope. Oh, thank you, hope.
Yeah.
But for ambiguous grievers,
Yes.
hope can also be more like the annoying parrot Iago from Lion King, just squawking, hope, 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 right? And to your point, it is really, you just get sick of it when it
Yes.
doesn't materialize,
Yes.
and that hope doesn't serve us. It
Yeah.
doesn't. So
Amazing. Okay.
finding the distinction is important.
So finally, where are you at now? After you've been on this amazing journey, which we thank you for because we are going to benefit from it. So where are you at in your own life at this point?
Well, quite divinely timed. Today would be the 25th wedding anniversary
Get out
for
of
my
here.
marriage.
Oh my God.
And
Oh my God.
that is, I couldn't think of a better way to start the day
Super. Me
than,
either. Yeah.
right? So thank you.
Mhm.
Of course, you had no idea when
Yeah, of
you
course.
invited
Yeah.
me for this time. Um, and so I recognize that as, I call it just a divine sign, the divine timing. Yeah, a coincidence, sure, whatever. These little serendipities, synchronicities, they help me.
Yes.
And, for a long time, Vikki, I thought my goal was recovery,
Yeah.
right? So, and as I co-authored the ambiguous grief process model and, understood that, this activating event happens and then we have grief in all of its forms present, and then hope
Mhm.
presents, and we can focus internally or we can focus externally, and internal hope leads to healing and recovery. And I thought, okay, recovery is the goal here,
Mhm.
recovery. And what I learned, though, again, as I was writing the book, was that I don't like recovery.
Mhm.
Recovery is, and I keep this little card on my desk. To recover, the etymology of the word is to go back again,
Mhm.
to cover, hide, or conceal,
Mhm.
not to openly display.
Mhm.
And I thought, I don't want to go back. I'm not
Mhm.
trying to go back to what
Mhm.
was. And instead I found a different word. And this is where I am today. And the
Wow.
word is regenerate.
Mhm.
And it means to be formed or created again, to be spiritually reborn or restored to a better, higher state.
Okay.
And so
Beautiful.
where I am, it
Yeah.
has been coming up, I think, on 8 years. And I know I will cry today. I will grieve today.
Yes.
Um, and at the same time, I am also regenerating.
Yes.
I'm a different person than
Mhm.
I was on that D-Day. And much as you write about, and
Mhm.
I'm sure members of the community understand, It's, certainly not how I would have wanted to have the experience of regeneration, but without them, it wouldn't have happened. So
Right.
I'm learning to trust slowly but
Yes.
surely,
Yeah.
and trust myself
Yes.
more than anyone else. And
Anything.
I think
Yeah.
that has been key. Just, I know that I am okay because I can trust myself to make the
Yes.
best decision for me going forward.
That is such a powerful message. And I know I have no doubt, that it's going to really inspire the women who have the benefit of looking at this video. I can't thank you enough. But, sort of in closing, how can people get in touch with you? What do you want?
Uh,
How do you want people to reach out to you other than, buying your book, which everyone should buy the book and read it because you'll benefit from it so much. But is there a website or, yeah, how can they reach you?
yeah, thank you. Sure. My website is my name, stephaniesarazin.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm
Mhm.
not great at social media, but I'm on
Mhm.
Instagram. And of course, always welcome to email me at steph@stephaniesarazin.com. I'd love to hear from you, hearing other stories, and understanding. The community continues to be validating for me, and I am always pleased to offer that validation to others too, because again, as you said, it's so
Yes.
important. Yes,
So
thank
I'm
you
just
so
going to
much,
repeat
Vikki.
that. I'm going to repeat that. So the
Mhm.
website is STEPHANIE or ZIN, Canadian.
That's right.
Yeah, STEPHANIE. Stephanie spelled in the traditional way, and right, attached to
Hmm.
that, Sarazin, SARAZIN.com.
Yes.
Speak English here, Vikki. So thank you.
Oh,
This has been amazing. And I hope you have a beautiful day.
thank you, Vikki. I'm so grateful. Thank you.